So what are we talking about today, Jer?
So today, well, it's the day after Mother's Day.
It is.
So today we're going to be talking about Ma.
The Sanskrit sound of ma or the sound a sheep makes?
A little bit of both. It's all relative. We're going to be talking about some polarity, since we're in Mother's Day. I'm going to start breaking it down. I realized the other week when we were talking, you were kind of like, Jeremy does, he does Reiki, he does craniosacral, he does polarity. You can ask him what those are. I'm like, okay, yeah, I guess we should probably get a little bit of a base description, because we talk about it a lot with Tantra.
Right.
You say, yeah, it's a spectrum. And we think about that as like, okay, well, the hell does that mean?
We talk a lot about it in Hermeticism and in the things that Thoth teaches, where everything is just, we think they're polar opposites, and they're really just poles of the same sphere. I mean, we just might find ourselves at any random point in between where we see the poles from a point of view.
Exactly. And it's not just one or the other. Our culture promotes the idea of left and right when it comes to politics. There's a lot of like bipolarity when it comes to our views on things. It's either one way or the other. It's a yes or a no. And the truth is that nothing is that way. Nothing is one way or the other. There are multiple different opinions. There are multiple different views. And when you start to really look at the geometric patterns and things that are in that kind of represent these ideas with yantras, that represent the ideas in sacred geometry, it's not just a flat plane. It's not one point or another point. It is multidimensional, right? So for this, at least when it comes to where we're starting, we're going to talk polarities. So we're going to say, I want to do something first of all to kind of like reframe our perspective on language. So on a magnet, you have a positive and you have a negative pole, correct?
Yes.
Positive doesn't mean you have a bright, big smile on your face and you have a way of looking at life that like everything is okay. And negative doesn't mean that sucks or any of the other horrible things. What it means is one is going in one direction and one is going in the other direction. And if you think about positive has a connotation of expansion, right? Positive has a connotation of pushing away or pushing into, and negative has a connotation of collapsing towards, of needing, of collecting or coalescing.
Or you could also look at it as positive is the complete growth principle, and negative is the cutting away principle of stopping that growth. Couldn't you?
Yeah, I guess kind of that kind of makes sense, but it's cutting away. I guess that kind of makes sense. Yeah, you're putting together things that work well together, right? Negative is, again, if you're thinking about it from a magnet standpoint, things are going to be attracted to it. So the problem with that, obviously, if you get too far to one extreme, then you have everything collected. Everything becomes too tight knit. Everything becomes too constricted. It becomes too. There's no space to move around in.
Right.
And if you go the opposite direction, you don't have a cohesive idea. You don't have a cohesive thought, or it's a stack of bricks as opposed to a house. And this is another place where we start to see the idea that masculine and feminine are always switching. There's a feminine and a masculine principle. Just because something is like negative in the idea of alchemy and in the idea of a lot of esoteric art, negative is female, right? So again, we're changing how we're looking at negative. It just means that in for like females, what females receive, right? So that's the idea of negative too. It pulls in. Whereas in masculine, it's more of a forceful exerting of energetic. So with the downward facing triangle, it symbolizes the vagina.
Right.
It symbolizes the coalescence of a point
at
the bottom.
The drawing in, like you said.
The drawing in of energy, yes. So when you look, again, we're going to kind of switch over to another philosophy. If you look at the tree of life, Malkut, which is the bottom of the tree of life, is earth. And it is the only element, or it is the only sphere, the bottom of the tree of life, that is earth. It's the only place where things are completely one thing. They're completely, everything is all together. Then the top of it is spirit and air. Like if you run up the middle of the shaft, it's all air. So the feminine aspect of manifestation is negative. The feminine aspect of energetic is constantly moving, is constantly switching, right? So you think about Shakti and Shiva.
Oh yeah, Shiva's the one who holds still, whereas Shakti's the one who moves.
And then Shakti moves around it, right? So in that, we see that it's not just about a polarity. There's a duality in the polarity. You know, that both of them are switching.
And you can look at yin yang too. Yes. Where like yin is the dark and the quiet and the still, weirdly, whereas yang is like the action, the bright, the loud. But in Hindu philosophy, it's the opposite, where like Shakti is the one who's dancing, singing, acting, moving, shifting all the time. And Shiva, the masculine principle, is the one who's holding still, collective consciousness, observing, not moving, quiet. So I feel like you're hitting on a really good point that all of the systems around the world have polarity and have duality. They don't all fully align with the same masculine, feminine energetics. And even if you look at like physical bodies too, the feminine body is the one who actually does the birthing, speaking of motherhood. So that would be the action of doing and pushing out and creating and forcefully bringing something into reality, whereas the masculine doesn't really participate in that except by planting the seed. So it's like he gives initially, but then he's removed from the process, whereas the feminine has the whole inside. So like masculine and feminine, I think, is one of the most confusing polar descriptions, because it keeps rotating, like you said, in all of the different systems and all of the different existences. The one thing that I've found in common, and I like that you brought up Malkut, is feminine is almost universally tied to the body of the earth.
Right.
There's one system where it's not, but I don't want to go into that because it's just very confusing.
Pardon. Yeah, well, now I'm kind of curious as to just what it was you were talking about.
Well, okay, fine. In Egypt, Geb and Nut are reversed. Oh, right. Nut is the sky mother who's arching over everything, and her milk is like raining down on us. And then Geb, his body, it's like his body sacrificed itself to become the plane on which we walk on.
Right. And again, when you start to get into those ideas in esotericism too, there are this comes back to the multiple layers, right? So, like if we'll take the four elements, for example, earth, solid, grounded, structured, water, unstructured, supposedly, fire, structured. How is fire structured? I don't know.
I guess because it sets boundaries. In astrology, that's when we talk about, like, is your fire healthy? We ask, do you set boundaries? Are you able to speak your truth? Are you able to
are you be direct? What it is that you're doing? Right. And then air is unstructured, right? So,
which is why you and I talk circles.
Exactly. Yeah, because when you start to talk to people who have a philosophical bent, or who are looking at life from a philosophical angle, there is no solid idea. A lot of the times it's like you literally have to look at it from a different angle to be able to constantly for you to be able to really understand something.
Yeah, the only constant is change.
Yes, yeah, and when you're listening to people talk, it literally does sound like they're poets, or they're just they're madmen. You listen to a lot of Eastern philosophers. It's like, what the hell is this guy saying?
Or even Alan Watts. It's like, oh my gosh, you just went in a circle again.
Yeah, and so you realize too that like you kind of like a dogmatic structure doesn't work. It's another reason why Eastern philosophies have archetypes for things, because it's like, this is the idea of what this is. It isn't ones and zeros,
Oh, I just realized, like, you said Eastern philosophy archetypes, and I saw Kali dancing on Shiva, and I was like, well, there's a connection for Nut and Geb with the feminine dancing on the masculine.
Right.
So it's like they're connecting those archetypes. Anyway, sorry.
No, it's cool. Yeah. But yeah, it's I don't even know where we were going with that. But it's so let's go back to simple, to more simple. Okay. So polarities. Coming back to an idea of masculine and feminine. So another name that we hear a lot of, and one of the ones that we're going to be talking about today, is Ra and Ma, right? So Ma, mama, coalescing, negative, condensing energy. Ra is energetic, is the energy of the body that is moving on the right side, and it's moving up, right? So Ma moves down, Ra moves up. Where else have we heard Ra?
Hare Rama, Hare Rama.
Yeah, we know. So we have Rama, Hari Rama. We have Ra, the sun god. So we have the idea of an energy that is moving, that is masculine, that is uplifting, that is bright, that is shiny.
I totally just heard Beach Boys with Ra, Ra, Sisumba.
So with Ma, we think of, for me especially, I don't know why, but Mahakali, right? So Ma, darkness, condensed, shadow, unknown, the crushing, like, again, you and I have both worked with Kali a lot. And if anybody listening to this hasn't, you can feel a shift in the room and in your body physically when you start working with Kali. When you start saying her name, or you start using one of the mantras, there is a compression, there is a heat, there is a building. When you're using Rama, 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 and you're alighting on it, the Ra really is uplifting. You feel like if you chant Rama, or like Hare Krishna, like any of the more those masculine archetypes of Vishnu, you feel euphoric. The feeling is incredible. It's like you feel light. Your heart is lifted. Everything is moving in a completely different way. But if you're using, like I said, Kali or any of the other darker energies, the feeling is compressed. It's really uncomfortable. You can chant. That's one of the reasons why Kali is associated with sorcery.
Right.
She's associated with a lot of the dark arts. It's tantra. It's the dirt. It's sex. It's the things that aren't considered pure, because they're going down into the dirt. They're decaying. New life is springing from it, which is another reason why Kali is associated with that, right? It's like things have to die for you to have life from it. And one of the reasons why, in a lot of religions, women are thought of as the downfall, or women are evil. We think of Eve as the same way, is because for us to be blessed with life means that we are cursed with death. It is an absolute duality, that if you are born on this plane, if you go from being absolute, if you come from your light body and you come down into a manifest place, you're going to die.
Right.
And with that, you're going to have every experience of other things that are going to be connected to you. So in Eastern philosophies, there's the idea of releasing karma and letting go of all of these things. Buddhism, most of the Buddhist practices exist mainly in the higher realms, right? There's non-attachment. They come down and they're like, I'm not going to have sex. I'm not going to be attached to things. They want to minimize the amount of karma that they are associated with, so that they can continue the energetic of bringing the God energy down or through the human creation, human existence.
I think there's more reasons why the female has been demonized, but
oh, there's a lot. But I mean, that's one of, again, from an esoteric standpoint, we're trying to change the view on it.
I do think within that, though, we have, as humans, a limitation on why we have feminine and masculine represented in everything.
Right.
And it's we're putting ourselves into the image of God, like we made God in our own image. And therefore God is polar and God is dual. And that's something like the Hermetics, the teachings of the people who study in the lineage of Thoth, essentially,
That's you and me.
Yeah, really try to make apparent.
Yeah.
You know, we're just trying to understand something that we can't possibly understand in its entirety because we are human and we have limitations on how our brains can perceive things. And the second you can step back and perceive it as other than that, and you detach from the sexual understanding of masculine and feminine, and you put it into a polar opposite understanding, it makes the shift a little bit easier into understanding some of these things. I like using like harmonious and discordant, ordered and chaos, and like disruptive and complacent, and there's all these other like types of things that have different connotations depending on which way you put them in. Full and empty. And I think there's like ways of describing vessels, ways of describing energy that match some of these things. And I like to stay away from the masculine and feminine until absolutely necessary, because I think so many people do just resort to their gendered opinion of it, or their associations, like we're saying, with specific doctrine, with specific practices where the feminine acts in a certain way and therefore the masculine acts in the opposite. But that's not necessarily always the case. And it's hard when you say like, okay, air and fire are masculine and earth and water are feminine. Okay, well, what does that mean? And a lot of times, to me, we look at these elements as building blocks of the universe. And in order to create in our current three-dimensional reality, in order to make new life, you usually need a masculine principle and a feminine principle to come together to make a physical new thing. Like if you look at, like, I'll take it out of human examples, right? Because a lot of people get really upset when I say like you need a mother and a father. Like, you don't, you can have the other combinations. Technically, yes, in our families we do, but in order to physically make another human being, you need to have an egg and a sperm. And in order to physically make fruit on a tree, you have to have like the stamen and the pollen, and there's this whole process that happens. So that's the type of masculine feminine that we're talking about. And we don't want you to get confused on like goddesses and gods as being the ultimate representation of masculine and feminine, or as fire and air being the destructive and earth and water being the constructive, because they're not all that. Air can be constructive because air breathes life into you. Fire can be constructive because it stops the overgrowth that would crowd itself, and
it burns out impurities. If you're talking about,
and water can be very destructive. It can erode rock can be very destructive. There can be landslides, there can be volcanoes, so all of them have creative and destructive properties. And so when we say that there are certain associations in all of this, what we want to try and convey right now is that in every type of philosophy around the world, we have tried to explain opposites. And we are limited in our vocabulary, especially in English. English does not have as rich and deep vocabulary as other types of languages around the world, like Sanskrit, that describe these opposites. And so we use words like masculine and feminine to help us associate our ideas into an ordered system, because otherwise there's chaos. And chaos has its purpose, just like everything else in the universe. But order is what fundamentally produces new life. In a lot of ways, it helps us in our ascension process. And there's so many myths from all over the world that demonstrate how this is an end goal, where we come from one place and we spend a lot of time exploring all these other types of existences and realities until we return back to the beginning. And there's this insanely long, stretched out, convoluted in terms of time understanding of how that process works. But all of these words are used to describe that process. So when we do actions based off of these practices. We're trying to reunite, essentially. That's always the ultimate goal, is to get back to source or the universe or all or whatever you want to call it.
See, and again, I don't necessarily even know if that's the case. Like getting back to source or going down in the opposite direction. It's like, I think the fun part is actually riding the roller coaster. You know, it's being on
we wouldn't be doing it otherwise. But I'm saying, like, eventually that's always the desire, because this is magnetic in a sense, where like you're repelled away from the original whatever existence you were. And just like science is saying, the universe is constantly expanding, and it's expanding from this like internal point, and they're trying to pinpoint where that is, because then they can pinpoint the start of the universe. I'm like, just look within, babe, look within. You move out from that point, and then eventually you come back, like ashes to ashes, dust to dust. There's always this expanding and contracting, and that's why a lot of people describe things as spiralic, where instead of just circular, there's this beautiful motion of like circling away and expanding as far as you can, and then this motion of kind of circling back and circling inward and inward and inward until you get back to that. And there's a dance that goes with it. I think that's why so many things in Hindu philosophy describe things as a dance, because that's the easiest way to process some of this information. And then there's other ones who describe it as like chemical transformation. Like in alchemy, they describe it as like you start with lead and you work towards gold, but they're all the same thing, and they're just working on the polar opposites, and they're trying to reach the polar opposite. Other ones are a little more unifying, where they're trying to go from above and below and meet at the center. And there's different ways of doing it. So you're right, it's not always like super intended to go back to the beginning, but most philosophies that strive towards divinity of some sort are trying to reunite with their original divinity, whether it's explicitly stated or not.
See, so the thing that I'm seeing I'm hearing when you're saying that is like you're breaking out of the bonds. And if you look at yantras, if you look at sacred geometry, they just continue to build on top of each other, right? So the smaller down you get particle wise, the less space there is for light to move, the more compressed it is, right? So same thing, that you start kind of getting, we really do need to do a disclosure podcast where we can talk about aliens and we can talk about like a larger life forms and that type of thing, because you know, everything's relative. I'm 5'10". Relatively speaking, someone who is 3'5" is a lot shorter and smaller than I am. Somebody who is, you know, whatever, 6'5", can play basketball better than me, and they're a lot larger than I am. The physical container is going to limit how much energetic can move through it. So for me as a human being, I can run, I can jump, I can move. I have a certain amount of energy inside of me to actually attain a light body, but because of my physical constraints and because of my karmic constraints, I'm not going to be able to reach the levels of quote unquote God in this body from the idea of like being able to move every single bit of energy that's available in the universe through me.
Really?
I'm a fuse.
Because I would argue that we all have the potential. It's just a matter of mastering it.
It is, but we still have to. We still have to be able to. Think about the energetic that's moving through our body like on a dimmer switch, right? So if you turn it on barely, you have a little bit of energy that's moving through the dimmer switch, so the room is kind of bright, right? And this is the idea of enlightenment. You have a little bit of light coming through, you see something in the room, you're like, what the hell is that cube thing over there? Is that a dog? You know, whatever it is. As you turn the light up, you start to take in more and more of what the detail is of the thing, so that you can describe the experience in a better way. But the only way that you can relate to it is by the amount of energetic, the amount of energy that you are literally putting into seeing and understanding the thing. So for our bodies, it's the same way. The more enlightened we get, the more perspectives and the more angles at which we look at things, the more our understanding of the thing is going to grow. Right? So the larger our bodies would be, the more energy we can move through, the more our views on how we can relate to our outside experience grows.
I still disagree. I still think that you can hold more energy in your body than you even can fathom. Like,
we can move more energy through. That's the other thing too. Again, this comes back to the whole idea of clinging and grasping and the ability for energetics to move through. Like, this is 4 podcasts down the road when we're talking about fasting, but it's like all of the energetics that move through us, there's only so much access we have to quote unquote God through our perception. And I think, because again, think about talking to, say, your mom about this type of stuff.
Well,
but wait. If we dump everything that you and I have experienced in our enlightenment and our spiritual experience onto somebody, it's like turning the light up in the room all the way and they're blinded. People are like, oh my God, that is too much. I can't take that in. It's too much for my senses to process. But if you slowly and gradually start to do the uncovering and the unfolding, then your understanding starts to grow, and you can start to draw correlates and to start to get to see how much further you can get in life. So when it comes to the size of our bodies or the amount of material that makes up our bodies, more energy can clearly and easily move through, which is why, again, we don't get blasted out if you're trying to do a magical principle, or if you start having realizations. I think
I still don't like this whole size of the body thing, because I'm like almost a foot shorter than you. And that would mean that you would be able to reach enlightenment more because you have the capacity. No. Yeah. So I want to clear out that perception. I want to just say it doesn't have anything to do with your actual physical size body.
Okay, but again, this is not necessarily just talking about the size. We're talking about perspective-wise,
right? But you keep going back to the size of a body.
Yes, but the size of the body is, I'm talking about construction and condensed, right? So by letting go of karma, your body size is getting lighter, right? Because energetically, you can move more stuff through. Again, this is height-wise, and we're talking about reframing what our view of the words are. So Jesus coming down, or whatever enlightened being coming down, they technically, so let me completely withdraw my statement of height.
I was gonna say, like, you keep going back to it. I'm like, it has nothing to do with your actual physical body's capacity in terms of its height, its width, and any of that. We put on weight for sure when we're not managing our energy efficiently, or we put on weight when we're trying to protect ourselves because we don't feel like our energetic body is protected enough. And so we have to actually physically protect ourselves a little bit more. So either you build muscle or you build fat.
Right. But you can't run a car off of a 9-volt battery. You can run a car off of a car battery, right? So the size of the battery and the amount of energy that can move through it does matter.
Yes, and I do think that there are so many differences of what people can handle within their field. And right. I think that level of consciousness can't be determined by the physical container explicitly. Like, you can't look at someone and say, you're 6'5", therefore you can have more light consciousness running through you.
But as from a physical standpoint, they can lift and move more things. So the amount of energy that they are able to direct
in a physical sense, but in a magical sense, I mean, like, you can't deny that there were so many siddhis that yogis attained, and they weren't necessarily the tallest people.
Right. Yeah. No. Again, this is not like a hard and fast rule. Because again, when you start to get into taking away parts of the body by doing fasting, you are able to move more energy through. It's whether or not you're able to actually hold on to the enlightenment aspects that are coming through to you, or being able to actually control the energy in a way that is going to actually be helpful for you. Because if you still have ego, you still have past attachments, then your ability to actually to shift and generate, or to create, or to manifest is still going to be affected by those aspects. And that's energetic. That comes back to the idea of our emotional, the emotional things that we hold on to, any of our past experiences from past lives, or karma. Yeah, exactly. So, and again, that's slightly tangential. And again, just like I said earlier, whenever somebody starts talking about this kind of stuff, it's hard sometimes for the person even talking about it to describe it. Yeah. So
let's just step away from the physical container completely, because I so disagree with you. It's ridiculous. I think karma is a great place to talk about the polarity, right? Because we all are like, oh, have I done something good or have I done something bad? And now is that coming back at me? When karma just is. It's not good. It's not bad. It's our perspective of it.
It is just is, yes. But it's also it's the negative. It's not negative as in like good or bad, but it is negative as in like it's attached to you, right? If you have memories that still come up that are keeping you from moving forward, if you hear, if you have a bad experience with a dog when you're a kid, then you are always moving away from dogs, right? Because you're always scared of it. Then that's something that is going to be energetically attached to you that's going to keep you from moving towards or through whatever the thing is, right?
But I think that's still perspective.
I think that's that's karma is perspective.
Yeah.
It is how you tie to it and how you connect to your experience of what something is.
Yeah. I mean, I think there are times when you do something that you think is good, and it would have what we would call in this polar world a negative response because it's pulling you away.
Right.
Like this is something that comes up in Akashic Records readings for a lot of people where they've made a vow in a past life out of good intentions, but it's causing a withdrawal of some sort of energy that they want to engage with in this lifetime. Whether that was a vow of celibacy because they were in some type of priest or priestess or nun or monk position. They were doing a vow of celibacy in order to clear out space for other things to come through in that lifetime, but now it's carried over to this lifetime and now they're having a lot of trouble with intimacy. Or maybe they made a vow, like a warrior's vow, where they're going to always fight for whatever they believe is true or right, or like uphold certain things, and they're causing all of these arguments and sorts of crazy conflicts in their life, and they can't figure out why. And it's because they're carrying over that warrior mentality that's not necessarily able to make peace easily until they've killed it. Maybe they've made the opposite, where they were a warrior and they said, I'm never going to fight again, and now they're letting everybody bowl over them, where they can't stand up for themselves because they never want to fight again. And it's like a really bad type of pacifism where they can't stand for anything. Maybe they've made a vow of healing where they're always going to heal for free because in that lifetime they wanted to offer their healing service to everyone, and now in this time they can't seem to make any money doing their healing practice because they keep giving it away to friends and family, and they're just like always kind of poor, but they're really good healers. They can have a vow of the opposite where they're never going to heal again, and they have a really hard time holding the title of healer in this lifetime. And that one was personal for me. I was like, I'm not a healer. I don't heal people. Healing is for other people. I don't do that. And I was like on this really beautiful healing journey with a facilitator. She was guiding me with ancestor work and all sorts of things. And we got to this point where I, in a past life, had said, I'm never doing this again. I'm never going to be a midwife again. I'm never going to try and heal anybody again because too many people keep dying and I can't heal the world. So screw it. And it carried over multiple lifetimes later into this one where I was like, I'm never going to be a midwife. I'm never going to be a doula. I'm never going to heal anybody. So I think some of these karmic vows can be positive for certain reasons, and then they can have really negative repercussions in the sense that positive is pulling towards and negative is repelling away. Right.
I'm glad that you said that because I literally did a ceremony yesterday that was cutting old ties. Before we wrap, I want to come back just the whole idea of like the larger and smaller bodies to just the whole idea of the Egyptian gods and goddesses that we see representations of. So we'll leave that there as just kind of a breadcrumb. Yesterday I did a lot of yard work, and I've been doing most of my practice since we've been in quarantine in the backyard since it's been a lot warmer, and clearing a lot of stuff, doing my mantra, doing my practice, doing my yoga. I realized that there was a lot of things that was coming out of me energetically that was literally in the grass. That's like it's just all of this this old stuff as I was cutting. Like I was having all these memories coming up, and dumped all the grass out. And we have 3 sheds in the back in our backyard. It's pretty big. And one of the sheds has an old rope on it that's been there since I moved in. I like picked it up out of the grass and I threw it up there when I was doing yard work last year. And I picked it up and I was like, it's old. It's kind of like dried. It's rotting. I was like, this is my attachment to all of the old karmic stuff that's in my life that I feel like is kind of holding me back. So after I got done doing the rest of the yard, I took the rope and I started to unwind it. And I was saying, this is, I untie any negative connections with alcohol or food that my family had, like alcoholism that's been triggered, throughout my entire family. Started pulling it out, and any of these negative connections that I had from past relationships. And I don't know if I know you have, because you're an artist, but like when you pull on a rope that is literally like 3 strings that are bound together, you pull on it and one piece will come out and then the other 2 get tighter. It gets tighter and tighter. So started to kind of realize that as you start to remove certain aspects of our negative karma, or start to pull out some of these things, then other things are going to hold on a little bit tighter. There's going to be other things there's going to be more constriction, and it's going to take a while to untangle. Like I know, same thing. If you've ever untangled a ball of yarn or a wad of yarn that's gotten stuffed in a drawer, it is a nightmare. If you've got a piece of jewelry that ends up
it's also somehow very good Zen Buddhist meditation where you just sit there unraveling.
Yeah, and you're just sitting there and you're unraveling yourself, literally.
There's no end in sight, and I'm just gonna keep going.
Yeah. So at the end, I kind of set it aside, put it all down, let it go. So I can definitely say that if somebody is looking for a way to kind of, as a meditation, but as a magical practice to kind of like untie some things, that is a great way to do it. I've done string work with you before where I've bound an energetic to send it away, but I had never really done it before to unravel, and it was really freeing. It felt really good.
Cutting, where you tie it. Yeah. You tie the string as the representation of being already tied, and then you take scissors as the representation of you being able to release it of your own accord, and you literally cut the string. I like the unraveling though, because there is this insanely beautiful release that happens when you do get to the end, and all of the threads just kind of relax. Like the last little bit, it's taken so long, they've gotten so tight, and they're just like so angry. I always feel like they're angry. And like I'm pulling, and I do a lot of yarn work, like weaving and things, and I sometimes get this like ratted ball near the end, and once I find the right thread that will release it, everything just like, it's like a sigh of energy just kind of goes, and like all of the threads fall loose, and you can completely sort them out and discard the ones you don't need and use the ones that you will. And so I think that's a beautiful analogy of being able to like dive into your own energetics and see where every time you try to remove a pattern, the other ones get a hold of you even more deeply.
Right. Yeah, and if you want to go really crazy, get like a much larger rope that's made of more than just 3 braids,
Yeah, those spiral ropes. And I think that's something it's such fun imagery too, and why plant medicines like ayahuasca really work, because that vine is made up of all these vines twisted together, and when it gets inside of you, it helps to show you where those twists and turns are within yourself, and then it helps you unravel them.
Right. Yeah.
Mama. And there's a reason we call that vine Mama.
Ayahuasca, there you go. Because she does. I mean, it can be very constrictive, like the experience itself. And same thing, once it loosens, you're able to let go of so much of the stuff. She's going inside of you and squeezing out all of the stuff that you've been tied to.
And it's a death and birth process, because DMT is released naturally within the human body during birth and during death. And a lot of people experience both those things when they're sitting in that plant medicine ceremony. And it is, like you said, it's constrictive in both ends, right? You get super constricted if you're born a natural way, like out of the vaginal canal. You're squeezed as tightly as possible before you're released into the world. And then when you die, there's usually this like contraction of the breath one last time, right? The last exhale. And then from there, the spirit moves. And depending on which type of either religion or spiritual practices you ascribe to, there's different processes for the body once you go through that death. And some of them involve like actual constriction, where they wrap the body up very tightly, or they prepare it in such a way that
it's almost swaddled. It's like the same as when you're
when you're born. And that idea of the mother as the negative in terms of constriction, I think is a really good association. Mother also as expansion of being the doorway, of like opening. Right. And Mama Aya does that too, right? So like the Chakuna that's in there, she's the expansive mother. She's the one who waits for Mama Aya to do her work of like squeezing you so tightly that you can't handle it anymore, and like literally squeezing your stomach to get all of the contents out until you have space to expand. And then Chakuna comes in and she expands you, and you blast out sometimes. Mm-hmm. And that would be the positive. Positive mother.
Exactly. It is literally a spiral, right? It's going up, it's going down, in whichever direction. Okay, so we've talked mama in duality, of positive and negative. Do we want to talk dad, or do we want to just talk like Mara, which is in Eastern philosophies, Mara is the illusion, right? So Rama is the idea of going in one direction. Mara is the illusion of what's actually happening, and that's Ma first, right? So it's
what is Ya? Ya without the M, because Yam is the heart, but Ya.
It's the same. It's the center point. Center point energetically. It's right where the energy meets.
Because Maya.
Yama. Well, Yama is death.
And Maya is the illusion.
And Maya is...
So is death the truth?
Mara is the illusion. Maya is like the planet, right? Like Mama, like Maya. Isn't Maya?
Well, like I just remember being told in yoga teacher training that like we're living in the world of Maya, because Maya is the illusion.
It's illusion, right? And Mara is the illusion of death.
Okay.
Right? Or Yama. Sorry, Yama, not Maya. So Rama, energetics going in one direction. Mara, energetics going in the other direction. When it comes to the masculine trinity, Brahma is the manifest world, right? He's manifest reality. It's interesting too, because just like with that, Vishnu is the energetic of life. He's the rebirth in the Trinity. He's always coming back in a different form, right? He's presence. He's present existence.
Well, hold on. Let me go back real quick. So I have a goddess book that I love, and it says Maya is intelligence and creativity, creator of life, sun and day, water, magic. Illusion as personified as a Hindu and Buddhist goddess. Also worshipped in Nepal, Tibet, Eastern Asia, and the Himalaya. She gives life and the desire for life, also called the mother of creation and the material universe, connected to light, to sea, to witchcraft and magic. She seems to have endless manifestations. But essentially, illusion is the one that they've put quotes around in that definition. And I think...
Well, that's the thing. I think that whole idea, when you start, again, getting into the breakdown of the lettering, Ma is the energetic moving down, and Ya is light. So it's still the visual representation of
the light moving down.
Of the light moving down, right? So that's why it is the illusion. It's kind of like, I see that thing there, but it's because it contains light inside of it, but it's a physical, constructed, manifested form.
It's the idea of that light rather than the light itself.
Right.
And then you get into the cave in Plato.
Yeah. Which is why philosophy is so fun.
We just keep going in circles. So wait, what would Bra be? If Ra is one thing, then what is Bra?
I was just wondering that same thing.
Oh my goodness.
Let's talk about something while I look that up, because again, Ma is illusion. And let's see what Bra is. Actually,
well, Ma is the moving down and Ra is the moving up, right?
Right.
Would those be related to Ida and Pingala?
Yes, that's exactly what it is. And that's why they cross over too, right? Because they're going up the Sushumna Nadi.
Yeah, they weave within each other.
So let me see here. I know that Bra is... Where's the B's in Sanskrit? Pa, Ba. So Ba is Trimurti, embodying three. So again, it's the combination of Shiva, Vishnu, and Brahma, and then Ra. So it would be Brahma. Ra is Agni. So that's energy and devotion, right? Yeah. So again, it's the masculine version of Maya, right?
Okay.
Because it's the combination of the three masculine principles. Yeah.
And those principles are creation, preservation, and destruction.
Yeah, and again, same thing. When we think about Shiva, everybody thinks of destruction as in like physical destruction, but it literally is the destruction of the physical and still continuing on, right? Shiva is consciousness. It's being able to exist without form.
I think I like, what does Thomas Ashley Farron say? It's beyond the destructive and more like the perpetuating of the cycles, because as it ends each cycle, then you get the opportunity for new beginnings.
Mm-hmm. Which brings us to the story of Shiva, Brahma, and Vishnu. Yeah. So the story is that that Brahma and Shiva.
Brahma and
Vishnu. Yeah. Right. So the story is that Brahma and Vishnu are floating through space. They're doing whatever, and they come upon a shaft of light. Right.
Yes.
And they're looking at the shaft of light, and they're like, I don't know where this thing goes or what's going on with it.
Where did it come from?
Where did it come from?
They were both like, wait, I didn't make this. Did you make this? No, I didn't make this.
So they decide that one of them is going to go in one direction to follow the shaft of light, and the other one is going to go in the other direction to follow the shaft of light, and see if they can find where the beginning is and where the ending is. So they take off, and they're moving, and they're moving, and they're moving, and they travel for years, hundreds of thousands of years. And finally, Vishnu gets to a point where he's like, this thing ain't stopping. So he decides that
it goes on forever.
Yeah, he's like, it's just going to keep on going. So he decides to stop and turn around and go back to meet Brahma.
In the middle.
Yeah. So he comes back and he meets up with Brahma, and he goes, it doesn't stop, dude. Like, this thing just keeps on going. I've traveled for hundreds of thousands of years.
And I couldn't find the end.
And Brahma says, oh, well, I've been here waiting here for you for a while. I found the end of it and turned around and came back. And as that happens, the shaft of light turns into Shiva, and he says, that's
liar.
Yeah, that's bullshit, homie. He says, I am infinite. I have no beginning, I have no middle, and I have no end. I am infinite consciousness. And because, Brahma, you have lied because of ego, which, again, Brahma is the containment of ideas. He wanted to be the owner of, like, I knew this. I knew where the ending and the beginning was. It's that egocentric.
The idea that you can understand and comprehend God.
Right, exactly. So because of that, he was like, I'm cursing you that you aren't going to have any mantras. You might have devotees, but you're not going to have any mantras that are necessarily specifically for you. So
yeah, nobody's going to talk to you.
Yeah. And that idea of that is like, people are not going to worship things. People are not going to worship the structures of things. It's like the illusion of things. You can worship life and you can worship consciousness, but if you start worshiping things, then you're attached, right? This is another place where karma comes in. So
the moral of this story is...
The moral of this story, yeah. What is it, Amy? I feel like I've been talking a lot.
Don't pretend to understand God. Don't pretend to understand all. Whatever you want to call it. Don't pretend to know the intricacies of the universe. And don't get attached to the ideas that you come up with about it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really hard when we've discussed all of the things that we think about the universe.
Yeah, I know.
To have this as the moral of the story. But the idea is we can try our best to describe it. We will never fully understand it. And the second that you think you do, you stopped learning. Mm-hmm. You've stopped being able to walk on the path towards understanding. The minute that you say, I don't know where this begins and I don't know where this ends, but I'm having fun on the journey, is when your mind will actually open up to the consciousness that is available to you.
Right. Yeah. Don't be a materialist reductionist. That's a good way to understand things, but be a spiritual expansionist.
Don't be an unconditionally believing zealot of any particular religion or dogma or theory, whether it's science and atheism or Christianity or Islam. It doesn't matter. It's just they're all pieces of the whole. Mm-hmm. And the second that you acknowledge that they all might have a grain of truth within them, then you're on your way, because everything is nothing and nothing is everything.
Mm-hmm. And you realize that looking at it from a different angle, you're going to get a different perspective, and it may open you up to something that's not even connected to those things. It may be something that's completely down the path in a different direction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so there's one Brahma chant that has his name in it. And it has every principle of the divine feminine and the universal sound of beginning within it, because he's not even cool enough to have a chant that's just his name.
Well, I think
he effed up so badly at the beginning of time that you have to have all of the female forms of divine represented first.
I think it's the idea of trying to understand what makes it up, right? Like it's breaking down Brahma, and that's really what it is. It's like it's breaking him down. It's being like, no, homie, that's not right. That's not right. That's not right. Look at it from a different angle.
Did you look up Satchit?
I did.
Ekam?
I did.
Awesome. Can you please tell us that now?
Okay. So the mantra that we are doing for this week is, and also getting into this is how I present my stuff on Patreon for my teaching courses too. So if anybody is interested in this stuff, this is the kind of thing that I'm doing, actually breaking the mantras down piece by piece. So the mantra is Om Aim Hrim Shrim Klim Sauh Sat Chid Ekam Brahma. Om Aim Hrim Shrim Klim Sauh Sat Chid Ekam Brahma. So the words are Om Aim Hrim Shrim Klim Sauh Sat Chid Ekam Brahma. And the breakdown for this is Om, seed sound for the third eye. We all know that one. That's the center point right between our in our brow. Aim is the seed sound for Saraswati. So that's the seed sound for creativity, the seed sound for understanding. Hrim is the seed sound for Mara, and it's for the idea of dispelling the illusion of Mara. So it's clearing up any preconceived notions. It's wiping away and giving us a clean slate. It's one of the ways that we're able to see through the membranous fabric of reality. You know,
I like that those two are together, Aim and Hrim.
Yeah.
The Saraswati and Mara, because it's like the actual divine principle of creation and then our understanding of the divine principle of creation.
Right.
Illusion.
Perspective, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Next seed in the mantra is Shrim, so abundance. Om, third eye center. That's where we're focusing our energetic. Creativity, Aim. Hrim, dispelling illusion. Shrim, an abundance. So we're pulling in an abundance of those principles, the ability to dispel, the ability to have creative ideas. Next seed sound is Klim. So that is the seed sound for attraction. Klim, I realized this last night when I was doing the research on this. You were asking, is it Klim or cream? Klim and cream are both are both seeds of the Kali or the Durga principle. So Ra and La are very similar. Ra is very much a lightment. La is a lot more of a soft palatal. So Klim is a little more connected to Durga because it's more It's more of a gentle attraction. Cream has more of like a, yeah, you know, it's more of like a grounded, gritty, like you're shaving off, you're grinding off, you know.
I almost thought it was like going back to polarity. Klim was pulling towards you, and cream was pushing away.
I think it's the amount of energy that's coming in, because cream is the mantra for, or the seed sound for Kali. So it's literally just like more of a, it's the more powerful energetic of the same type of vibe. Because L's and R's in Sanskrit have kind of the same, have kind of
overlapping.
Yeah. So Klim, attraction. Om, third eye. I'm, creativity. Hrim, dispelling illusion. Shrim, abundance. Klim, attraction. Sauh is a it's an activator. It is like it's one of, like, S is one of the first seeds on the bottom lotus. So it's about getting like the root energetic started. So Sauh is a Shakti activator to try to get start to get your kundalini moving.
In Egyptian stuff, it has to do with the soul.
Yeah.
So that makes sense. That the divine within you.
Yeah. Sauh, Sat is truth. So Sat, like Sat Nam is like the our understanding of truth in the universe. Sat in this is truth. Next seed sound in the mantra is cheat. It's cheat or cheat, but it's cheat because it's a little more of an alignment, D's and T's. And this is something that I want to get into. We'll get into after this. Let me talk about this first. Cheat is consciousness. Ekam is the next seed sound, and that is one without a second. So the idea is that it is the whole consciousness, right? So it's
also the number one when you're counting in Sanskrit.
Yes, but it's one without there being another. So it's the removal of ego. It is absolute truth. It is central truth. And that's why the last word is Brahma, which is ego, right? So you're pulling in the energetic from, and again, we're starting at the top and moving down, right?
Poor guy, his name means ego now.
Sorry, Brahma, but also
really messed up.
Yeah. So third eye, creativity, dispelling illusion, abundance, attraction, activating your kundalini or your energetic inside of you, truth, consciousness, one without a second, so one conscious truth, and the representation of the manifest universe, so that we can kind of dispel the illusion of Brahma also. This is being able to break this stuff down too. It starts to kind of remove some of the religious aspects of this, right? Like when you start to look at language from this standpoint, you see what the power of the words are, and you start to see how what we say literally creates our reality, which is why Eastern esotericism and Western magic cross over.
Right. When you say, and so it is, or so it will be.
Right.
And so it is so much more powerful than will.
So because we have these two words that we kind of touched on, cheed and Klim and cream, so cheat and cheed. The Sanskrit alphabet, the reason why like pronunciation is so important is because you are literally alighting on things, right? So you don't have hard T's or you have K's, but it's like Kali, you light on it. The reason again why us using specific words when you're casting spells or when you're using mantra is because depending on the force of how you say it is going to depend on how the energy is directed. So you know, if you're smacking, if you're taking a baseball bat and you're smacking a ball, like how hard you hit it and where you hit it is going to affect where it's going to go.
Right.
Take this idea and put it inside of a yantra. Okay, so you have the circle. Think of the circles in a yantra as vowels.
And if you don't know what a yantra is, it's the image representation of these things. So if you were to look at a picture of a chakra, then the yantra of each chakra is those symbols that are inside of it.
It's the representation of the yantra. So you have the circle, which is vowels, or the whole, right? That's the kind of the container. The sacred geometry that is inside, there's always triangles, there's always squares, there's all these other angles. Those are going to be the consonants. That's where the energetic is being reflected and moved back inside and up, right? So you have the vowels, you have the oh, yow, all of that energy. Where you hit with your consonants is going to direct the energy towards the next point, like a prism, to send the light or the energetic into the thing that you're trying to bless, that you're trying to get energy to move through, that you are making. If you're making an amulet, you're putting that energy into it. Another reason why intention is incredibly important, like if you get really angry, you get really constricted, and the more open and happy and hopeful and loving you are, you do things with a more of an open and loving energy, the easier it's going to be to move things through, right?
Yeah, there might be a lot of force that comes with the angry constriction, just like if you are putting pressure on something, but it's going to hurt. It's going to have ramifications, it's going to come back.
Right.
Whereas if you have that kind of open, easy, receptive nature, as you move the energy, it comes back in like a really loving wave. So I think that's one of the easiest ways to think about it.
Right. So you giving birth, like were there times when you were more constricted where it hurt more, and times when you just kind of let it happen where it was a little bit easier?
Oh, definitely. I mean, that's the whole process between from a lot of the different types of birthing techniques that are a little more on the hippy dippy crunchy woo woo side, where you hear them talking about like shifting your perspective from I am in pain to this is an intense feeling. This is very intense. This is a large kind of expansion of the possibilities of sensation that I didn't know my body was capable of. So instead of saying like, oh my God, I'm in so much pain, saying, wow, I didn't know that my uterus was this strong and it could squeeze this tightly. And it's really hard to just describe it that way. Most women who weren't coached through a birthing process in a way that was focused on shifting that mentality would utterly deny that they were capable of doing that because they weren't exposed to those ideas. I, on the other hand, had a doula who was really into orgasmic birth and introduced it to me during the first few weeks of my first pregnancy. So it was something that I was really aware of throughout the entire process, where instead of feeling any pain or discomfort or what we would typically call negative emotions, I shifted it to a pleasurable experience where I was like, wow, I can't believe I'm going to meet my baby soon. Oh my goodness, this is so fascinating, this process. Like you approach it with curiosity, awe, and humor.
Right.
And suddenly the entire thing shifts. And that's like such a radical act of magic. And it's a core principle of one of my teacher's philosophies, Carolyn Elliott, is changing everything to this place of curiosity and humor. Because the second you do, suddenly nothing feels quote unquote bad, in our opinion. The karma just becomes interesting as opposed to negative. And things that we once perceived as really detrimental or awful, we can suddenly see as growth opportunities. And we might not necessarily enjoy the experience while we're in the thick of it, but it is possible. Eventually, once you start doing the practice enough, you do. And with birth, there are points where you feel so constricted. You feel like this rush of pressure that comes into your body, and it feels like you have no control. And the second you try to control it, the worse the pressure feels. The second that you release and surrender to it, the more that the pressure is able to expand within you and you're able to hold more of it, and therefore it's more successful. And it's a really strange feeling to have to move through and surrender that way, because it's not something our culture practices, right? We like to take control of stuff. And so as a magical thing during birth, they have you make sound, which you and I know instantly changes everything. So you're doing these deep, low, guttural, almost animal-like noises, because the second you hit those upper registers, you're sending energy up. And so it's a process of moving energy down.
Right.
Because the more energy you're able to concentrate to where the baby is moving, the quicker that your body and the baby can work together to do the job that they want to do. Because it's actually the baby who sends the signal to the mother's body and says, okay, I'm ready to be born. And most people don't know that, especially people who like plan cesareans. They think that the mother's in control the entire time. And it's actually the baby's body who signals and says, hey, I'm ready to come out now. And a lot of times it's that baby's soul who's saying, I want to be born at this time with these stars over my head. And so we have to really honor and respect that. And the baby might come really early. And we might be like, why are we having a preemie? Like, this is terrible. I can't believe we're going to be in the NICU for so long. But that baby wanted to come then because they wanted that particular signature of the energy that was going on in the day. And so when the mother begins to surrender and release and remove all ideas of control, and the only thing that she can control is her own energy, it's like the ultimate test in life of, oh, I can't control anything outside of myself. But the moment that I begin to control myself in a way that is in sync with my soul, then everything around me feels like I can control it. Because you start to magnetize yourself, right? You start working with those poles, those things that we're talking about, where it's the as within, so without principle, as above, so below. If the mother is in a state during birth where she is focusing all her energy into surrender and into witnessing and into stepping into the unknown of how much her body can physically tolerate, and just wonder at it, literally have a sense of wonder at the expansion that happens in order to create another human being. You step into a place of like in between the worlds. You literally shift into the sacred space. I remember being really angry at my midwife during the second birth because she pulled me out of it because she wanted to check and see how far progressed I was. And I was like in this deep zone trance and I was loving it. I was loving every contraction, which is weird to talk about, but I was like witnessing them rolling through. It was like a roller coaster motion of like you could feel it building and then it would hit this peak and then it would just slowly lessen and you would be released from it, and just watching how they each were unique in their own way. And then the active pushing is best when the baby is already what they call crowning, like down, like basically about to come out, because then you're just moving with the flow. When you have to push and you're not experiencing contraction or the baby's not all the way down, it sucks. It's painful. It hurts. In my experience, because you're moving against what the body's natural rhythms are. You're moving against what the baby's natural rhythms are. And there are times when it needs to happen that way. My midwife was saying that the heartbeat was not where she wanted it to be for the baby. And so she wanted me to push near the end. And I was really angry because I could feel that my body and his body weren't at that place.
Right.
And then with that anger, that emotion came the sense of discomfort. And so I had to release the energy and trust. And so it's this constant play back and forth of like, okay, I'm trusting her medical expertise. I'm trusting her instruments, and I'm trusting that he wants to actually come out now and not later. And so he's causing this to happen. His soul is saying, I really want to come out now, even though I'm not fully down yet.
Right.
And so like there's this interplay of trust that happens. And I think it's a really good expansion of our lives where then that's why birth is such a sacred rite of passage. And a lot of people don't respect it for what it is. But if we're able to move through these contractions in our life, these places where it's really uncomfortable, where either work is not going the way we want, or relationship is not going the way we want, or physical health is not going the way we want, and we sit in those contractions with a sense of trust and surrender without complacency, I think is the best word, then we're able to start activating some of these things because we can witness, we can see the poles, we can say like, there is no beginning, there is no end. I am in the present moment and I'm going to respect that space, that I'm exactly where I need to be. And I'm going to work with the energies I'm experiencing. So if I'm experiencing what I would label as discomfort and pain, I need to step back and witness why. Why am I visualizing it this way? What is the illusion around this? Where's the truth in this? And then being able to step into that space of truth is going to help you move through, help anyone move through what we would identify as discomfort and pain and turn it into humor and witnessing and eventually pleasure.
Laughter amongst tears is one of my favorite emotions.
Well, I mean, you can be in complete state of sadness and find it pleasurable.
Right.
That's something that like we have to remind ourselves is we might thoroughly enjoy something that is normally identified as a negative emotion. And that's why I think it's really good to remove positive and negative, masculine, feminine,
Right.
all of these things from the normal identifiers in Western culture, because an emotion is.
Yeah.
The way karma is. Like the emotion, we just choose to experience it as good or bad, or we choose to experience it as positive or negative.
And we choose to hold on to the way that our emotional body is reacting to it too. So yeah,
right.
This is a big thing in psychology of moving towards the emotion, moving
right.
through the emotion. Like you don't want to avoid it, because when you avoid it, that becomes physical pain. And when that becomes, this is how knots form in the body. Again,
right.
Mind, body, and soul are all connected.
Yeah, body's just the densest form of everything else that's existing.
Exactly. And so let go of Brahma, let go of any of that stuff that you're holding on to, those ideas, those preconceived notions that you have, that your body is pain. There's so much of that too. I feel like with people who are, at the end of their life, when they kind of become, I don't want to say resigned, but they're like, they've accepted it. It's kind of like, yeah, like I'm here. I've decided that it's time to let go. I've learned, I've had my experience. Like the people who are usually the ones that are more affected by it are the family members, because they're the ones that are being left behind, and they're, having something like that removed where they lose control. I think, that's a big part of it for people who have kind of like are coming close to the end of their life. They just kind of, they accept it. They accept where they are, what they've done, the whole idea of talking to a priest or whatever, just kind of like letting go of any of the things that may still be coming up for them so that they can move on unburdened. It's literally just kind of, it's the same as talking to your psychiatrist. If you can't talk to yourself and sort your own stuff out, or talk to God, then it's thought of, again, it's interesting the way that the Catholic Church has done that. It's like confession, confess your sins. It's like, what are you holding on to? Like there's still a judgment that's related to that, right? So
I think that's still an opinion,
right?
It's always an opinion of like, if you're experiencing guilt or shame or fear or oppression of any kind, those emotions tend to come with a lack of acceptance around the circumstances that you've experienced
from the outside.
Yeah. And it's put on you with either expectations or identifiers that explain good or bad behavior. When we look at it instead as this was the karma, this was the lesson, this was what I chose to experience in this lifetime, then nothing was wrong. Nothing is broken. You might be breaking open seals that are holding you back.
Right.
You might be shifting out of things, and that growth period can be uncomfortable because we're not always mentally ready to go along with the rest of ourselves. And that's why I think integration after ceremony is so important, because a lot of times we get these big expansive blowouts of energy and we don't know how to process them. And so then life becomes even harder because we're operating at a different frequency than we're used to, and we don't know how to move with it in a productive, peaceful way. And so saying a mantra like this mantra, Om I'm Hrim Shrim Klim Sachit Ekam Brahma, is that space of I am both surrendering to the flow, aligning myself with the flow, and attracting the flow towards me so that I don't have to worry about my ego trying to be in control of it all.
Right. Yeah.
It's so funny because we always talk about stepping back into your power, reclaiming your power, owning your power, having the responsibility of your power, and at the same time turning over all of your power. And it's those hermetic principles get so confusing for people, of that idea everything is nothing and nothing's everything.
Right.
You are all powerful and you have no power.
Well, this is like,
this is fate and your free will.
When I picture, we were talking before about some of the fictional ideas or representations of magic. Like the way that I always picture myself as a magician, if I'm, in that space where I'm moving things around, is not casting, like shooting fireballs out, and it's not like making the earthquake. I guess it's kind of, I haven't watched The Last Airbender, but it feels more like that, where it's like things come at you and you either let it move through and around and you send it back to the direction that it was coming, or just moving with it. It just feels like there's so much more of a flow for me of like.
Did you watch the cartoon series?
I started watching the first episode after you hammered on me about watching it in 2015 when we first met, but I never got the rest of the way into it.
Well, the best thing is they're all working with the same thing.
Right.
They're just approaching it different ways, right? They either have a power that comes from a specific element, or the avatar can manipulate all the elements. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, the avatars they're not born in this series, in this mythological world. It's also very, very realistic. They are born with a dominant power. Like, they're born to a specific race of people who manipulates one specific element. So there's like the water tribe, the earth tribe, the fire tribe, and the air tribe. And during that avatar's lifetime, they have to learn to work with all the elements. And that's why they are the unifier and the one who brings peace to the planet in that world, is because they're able to unify all the elements within themselves, whereas the other people are only kind of able to see from one perspective. Mm-hmm. And the avatar is a child in this episode. And so it's very, very difficult for him, because he is approaching everything as play, and he doesn't want to have like the discipline and the structure that comes with the learning of these other elements. But he also is able to incorporate all the other elements much faster because he's a child and he is approaching it with play. So there's like this fun duality that starts to happen, where once he realizes that there's a point to the order, but you can't release the chaos. Mm-hmm. At the same time, that's when the power starts to happen. And he also has to master his emotions in the very end, where he has to realize that the emotions, while they are completely valid, while they are necessary as part of human experience, aren't all of who we are.
Right.
And he has to just sit calmly in that state of consciousness that is very beautifully represented in Shiva and Christ and Buddha, in that sense of like stillness and surrender, and everything else moving around him and witnessing. And once he can find that complete sense of calm, he's able to unlock the last key, and he finds like the ability to harness all the elements at once, and he turns into that ultimate alchemist. Because the fire tribe uses anger in a really beautiful way. The water tribe uses like surrender and flowing in a really beautiful way, but they also are able to like both sides, right? Fire can also be laughter and joy, and water can also be like destruction and sadness. And so they balance each other. And then the earth and air is like all flying around and not grounded and not able to like get a whole lot done because they just keep flying. Whereas earth is only practical, and they can't always see the big picture because they're constantly looking down at the ground. And so in that world, you see all of these representations of archetypes and personalities. And so as a cartoon, it's like very well done. Mm-hmm. But it's also that ultimate avatar experience of there is no point of existing without the others. Like, you can't just have one, and you also can't always contain them all. Not everyone's ready, and there was only one who was ready during each time. And he connects back to his ancestor line in one of these episodes, where it's really, really beautiful. He encounters a temple, and he's able to see every past life. And it's like when you step into the Akashic records and you're like, oh, I've done this before. And he's just like weeping, looking at the faces of every single past self, and acknowledging that he's done it thousands and thousands of times, and that he's chosen to come back every single time when the earth needed him the most.
Spoiler alert, gee.
That's not even the end. It's not even near the end. It's just one of the points when he starts to realize that he has everything within himself already. He has all the knowledge. He doesn't need the external teachers anymore.
I need to watch this show.
Yeah. There's so many things. Like, I was thinking of the Earthsea series from Ursula K. Le Guin too, where he has to integrate his shadow, and every time he tries to create more light, the shadow deepens. And it's the same thing, like with the constriction of the rope. Like every time you start to free up one part of yourself, the other parts start to constrict even more. And the more that you think you know, the less you actually know. And they've all got pieces. They've all got pieces of the truth in various ways.
Right. Well,
ultimately, humor is what saves everything.
It always is, right? But that's the polarity. Like when you get to, it's the whole idea of like keeping from getting to the point of rupture. You know, if you go too far in one direction with anger, oh my God, something gets broken, and then you have to spend time fixing that problem, and you're not able to send the energy to other places.
Yeah.
And like,
but if you have no anger, then you have no boundaries. You get walked over.
You become, if it's all pillar of mercy, then you're like, you end up with absolutely nothing. You know, you end up like.
And I have to remind people, like, Buddha got angry.
Yeah.
Right? He got pissed off and sad when he saw the real state of the world when he moved out of the palace. Jesus got angry. He was tossing over tables in the temple. He was yelling at demons who were messing with people's lives. He was like, get away from me, devil. I don't feel like jumping off a cliff right now. Like there were points where these really beautiful enlightened beings used their anger in a really productive and profound way.
And again, that's the dance, right? Like walking the middle path, whether it's yoga or Christianity or any of these other religions, any of these other these light paths, is being able to see the point of the demon that's challenging you. It's being able to, being able to see why compassion is so incredibly important, and also how you're, being compassionate to somebody who is hurtful is going to help them to come back into the other direction. Like again, it's the gravity. That's why I keep saying that it's like an air power, like from that, but it's like, it literally is like, how do we redirect this just like the planets and move it towards something else? How do we shift this away without it hurting the person or someone else? So, and that's why love and compassion is such a huge thing, because it's pulling everything back to the center. It is seeing it from a different angle, so that there's a, again, the cities, it's going from realizing that you have a consciousness and then starting to move up into someone else's consciousness, someone else's perspective, like being able to see from their perspective, be inside their body. Right. So how could their life be better? And you don't really force it, but you say, let's see if they can realize how their life can be better. And another reason why all of these teachings are so important, like, I'll say this is just because we're the verbiage that we're using, but God bless all of the pilgrims and the people who go out to try to bring water and food to people in other countries. But you are causing problems when you're forcing religion onto people. If you show
the missionaries?
Yeah, missionaries. So like by going to
like pilgrims.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. God bless the pilgrims. Thanks for all of the turkey. No, like missionaries, like the whole idea of going
and smallpox,
wanting to go and help people that are in a bad position is great. But again, lead by example, right? We've talked about this in past episodes too. You don't force something on someone. You don't destroy someone else's belief system. You say,
just because you think yours is
right.
better.
You say, this is there's some similarities here. Probably in that same principle, this is how that you guys could reach enlightenment, or this is how you could have less of a tenuous relationship with that tribe that's next to you.
Yeah.
So,
well, I'm always curious too. Like it's like the prime directive stuff, right? There's that principle that was like really popular in Star Trek that most people, that's where they've heard it before.
Right.
The idea that you don't mess with the culture until they show that they want to be messed with is so key. You don't reveal things that are beyond comprehension. There's a reason that your guides and your master teachers don't just suddenly flood you with all of your past lives at once, because you wouldn't be able to process it all. You'd probably implode a little bit and you'd either go mentally insane or you would do something else. So, I mean, that's going to be a whole other episode, which we should do. But the idea of recognizing that poles are just our human understanding. They are we live on a planet that has poles. Therefore, everything we relate to has poles. And so there's this up and down, right and wrong, left and right. We don't have enough words in our English vocabulary. There's masculine and feminine. There's all of these things, and they all have a meeting place in the middle. That's why the center of the circle is so potent and powerful, and why when we do ritual, we usually put altars or the thing we're working on in the center, because that's where all the poles meet. That's where all the opposites meet. That's the point that we're always working towards, is to come back. And that's why we're like, are you feeling centered?
Yeah. Are you grounded? Are you centered?
Yeah, it's that space of, as long as you recognize that light and dark are connected, that you cannot have one without the other. You cannot experience. If you say that you have light without darkness, then what is light?
It's unstructured. Like, it literally gets to the point where, because when you start kind of casting out opinions about things, it's kind of like, oh, well, there's the darkness. You know, there's the thing that it's hitting off. Yeah. That's the consonant.
And darkness without light is just, it's that complete void that has nothing in it. It's everything disappears.
Right.
In both ends of the poles, everything just disappears.
Right.
And so because we're in existence, we are somewhere between the two. And I admire the tenacity that some people have to work towards one of the poles in this lifetime, whatever that is, order or light or peace and harmony, like all these beautiful principles, because there is a part of me that recognizes that once you attain those things, you do reconnect with the divine holy. And because I want that, I want to go back to my star family. I want to go back to a higher form of existence, because I'm just curious about all of it. I realized today that I am like, if I'm going to be a character in Lord of the Rings, I'm totally Pippin, where he has the moment where he asks Gandalf like another question, and Gandalf's like, what else do you want to know? And he lists like the longest string of things that have nothing to do with the conversation they were having. And then at the very end, he's like, but really all I wanted to know was the answer to the specific question I just asked you. It's like, I have time for the rest. And I was like, oh my God, yes. Because I want there to be less suffering and pain in the world, because it isn't fun while you're going through it. And it isn't something that I want other people to experience. I don't think that evil is good at all. I think it's evil. And I think there are reasons for it. I think that there are parts of the universe that have agreed to play those parts for the other parts of the universe who've agreed to play their part. But I don't think that that's the end goal, is to maintain this existence. I think we're all actually trying to elevate constantly, and that there's new energies coming up from below, because there is this constant creation of the universe, the churning of the ocean that we call the Milky Way, that they illustrate really beautifully in Hindu myth. And that pillar of light that is Shiva, I think, is what most of us wish we could comprehend, and that's why we work towards the light. But I think so many of us are still Brahma, and it's not quite attainable. And then there's like the Vishnu consciousnesses who admit that they don't know everything, yet they still are God, and that's where you get like Jesus, because I think they have really similar vibrations, right? Because they keep coming back to help the planet. They have that bodhisattva energy, where they refuse to fully step into nirvana until everybody else is enlightened as well. And honestly, like right now, and I don't know if this is ego or what, but I really do feel like if I was given the opportunity, I would say like, nope, I'm going to wait until everybody else is enlightened too. I want to be a master teacher. I want to be one of the ones, because I enjoy teaching. I enjoy helping other people find their light within.
Yeah. I've thought about that too. It's definitely, it's a role that I feel like I play as well. Like it's the other day I kind of realized that I don't want to be a spiritual leader. You know, I don't want to be, I don't want to be a spiritual guru. I don't want to be a spiritual guide. I want to be a spiritual teacher, teach people how to connect to their own spirituality, teach people how to connect to the divine that they are and that they already know that they are. It's just, again,
we're like activators in that space where someone comes to us, and instead of saying like, this is the way, this is the truth, this is the life you should lead, we say, what is your way? What is your truth? What is the life you want to lead? And the best gurus, that's what they do. The best gurus sit there and they're like, I don't have the answers, you do. Yeah, we might have some tools that we can offer that you can use to help you on that journey, on that path. That's a threshold guardian. Go read Joseph Campbell if you haven't. But the high priestess in the tarot, the Hierophant in his highest row in the tarot, the Hermit, like all of these cards, they're there as way showers, as like, here, I'm holding the light, I'm holding the scrolls, I'm holding the keys, and I want you to be able to pick them up yourself and not need me anymore. Right. Because then you get to the world. That's the only way you get to the world, is if you get past these teachers. So go chant. That's what this chant does. That's the whole point we're talking about this. That's why we're talking about this, because this chant, Om Aim Hrim Shrim Klim Sauh Satchit Ekam Brahma, that chant repeated over and over and over again helps you take up those keys. It helps you open the scrolls. It helps you step through the doorways into your unknown and known self.
Beautifully put, and a beautiful way to wrap up this episode.
Hey, thanks so much for listening, guys. If you want more unraveling of mantras, then go check out Jeremy's Patreon. Both of our Patreons have options where you can hear these mantras chanted 108 times, so you can use it as a meditation tool to help you learn to sing along eventually, so you can sing by yourself, but that's what they're there for. My Patreon also has a couple other things on it if you want to go check that out. All Souls, we're covering the elements right now, and we just stepped into air officially, and so on my magic page I'll be doing the tarot correspondence of that, which is the sword family. So each week we're going to be going over things like that, and Jeremy and I will fill in more details about what we talk about on the podcast on the Patreons. So please go check those out if you want more information. Otherwise, just subscribe to the podcast on as many platforms as you can: Spotify, iTunes, Anchor. And please leave us a review. A 5-star review is great, but if you can do actual verbal ones, thank you, Elise, so much for leaving us that review. Because the more that people can read about it and read about how it's helping you in any way, then the more they become interested and then share it with friends. And that's the way that all of this magic gets disseminated throughout our consciousness.
Yeah. We ain't looking to convert anybody, but we want to enlighten and educate as many people who are interested.
Yeah, we're not proselytizing. Yeah. We're just having book clubs.
Yeah, exactly. Because I realized that too when we first started to do the podcast. I was like, I'm going to need this. Oh, I'm going to need this too. Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm going to go grab this philosophy book. I might need this just in case I touch on something. So I love you, you big nerd.
Oh my gosh. It's so fun having other nerds in physical form.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah.
It's necessary.
And that's the thing too. Like, you're talking about being a master teacher. You don't necessarily have to come back in physical form either. Like, these teachers come and they will speak to you. They will come and they will talk to you and they will help guide you, so.
And you have to give them permission to do so. That's the thing. We talk about power, and that is one of the powers is with that prime directive thing. They will not step in until you ask for it. Your star family, your angels, your spirit guides, whether they're plants or animals or ancestors. If you say, hi, I would like a course on.
Yeah.
I would like a course on miracles, please. You don't have to go read Marianne Williamson, but you can. You can actually just ask your angels to start doing miracles around you. And sometimes they'll do it if like if your soul is like, save their life right now, they're about to go off a cliff. But for the most part, they don't interfere at all until you give them permission to do so.
Right. And the thing is too, that if there are certain teachers, we kind of talked about this before with working with certain deities, if there are certain things that you do that you have done your entire life, then those are the teachers who have already been guiding you, and they will show up when you are ready to see them, and they will start giving you more homework
or
to
hear
do.
them.
Yeah, or hear them or smell them, whatever Claire said you're working with. But yeah, it's
one of the Claires.
Yeah. And be open to it. If you are, that's great. If you want to just stay in illusion and continue on down the path of, enjoying life without living I would say a higher purpose with like any type of like negative connotation to it. But if you'd rather just stay here and do your own thing, then that's fine too. But I believe that we're here for bigger things than that.